Hi, I'm Chad with Move for Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to show you fingering options for the major scale 5 chords that I covered in the last lesson. First off, if you like the diagrams for everything in this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. And this e-guide will be something that you can study and use as a reference for years to come. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download it. But I am working on it as I'm filming this lesson, so if it's available, a link will pop up on the screen that will allow you to download it. If no link appears, you can look in the description and it'll say whether it's available or coming soon. And if it's not available yet, you can sign up for our mailing list and we'll send you a copy as soon as it is available. Also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all of the charts will be on the screen. And also be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day. This is part 4.8 from our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So I'm going to show you some fingering options for the 5 chords since there were quite a few that differed from the 1 chord or the 4 chord, even though they're all major. And again on the screen you have the major scale, but with your root being the 5 note this time. So if this was your major scale, this would be the original root, then you'd have whole step, half step, and so on. But now we've made the 5th note the root, just like we have done before. But this time I moved it into the key of C. The first time I showed you with this 5 chord, I showed you in a different key, but I moved it into the key of C just so we can have everything near the middle of the fretboard like we were doing when I was showing the other fingerings, and so that I can use these intervals to show you different ways to get different fingerings. And again, I'm not going to show you very many options. I'm just showing you ones that have the 6-string root. I have other lessons and other e-guides that are available that go way more in depth and show a bunch of options for different chords and fingerings you can get. I have beginning chords and chord progressions e-guide and a bunch of lessons that correspond with that show different beginner chords you can use. I also have an e-guide that I'm working on right now, which is called Intermediate and Advanced Chords, which will have chords more like the ones I'm going to show you in this lesson, more difficult to play, or bar type chords, or ones that have bigger stretches than the basic open chords. So if you want more options for how to play these chords, check those out. They're all in there. That'll be really useful to you. But also, like I've been saying, hopefully from these lessons you get enough theory that you could start building your own chord dictionary. That the theory I'm giving you will enable you to build your own, to be able to see how they would lay out on the fretboard and understand what's going on. And then if you build your own chord dictionary, you're able to find the ones you like the most, that work best for your hand and have the best sound to you. So since the 5 chord is a major chord, we're going to start with the basic C major bar chord just because it's an easy place to build other chords from just to start. And the first thing we're going to do is just drop this root back a whole step to the flat 7, and that's going to give you a dominant 7. So that's a C7 chord right there, and that's a full version using all the strings. Then if you were to take out the 5s and the extra root, you would end up with a C7 shell voicing, which we've already covered. And then from this C7 shell voicing, you could add the 5th in right here. And you already know this voicing because this is a drop 2 voicing. So that's a C7, that's a drop 2. And of course, then you should know that if you move the 5th up an octave, that would give you your drop 3 voicing. So that's different ways to play the C7. And then from here, we're going to go to the other dominant chords. So the first thing we're going to do is get to a dominant 9th chord. So the way we can do that is to move the 3rd to here and then move this 3rd back a whole step to the 9th, and we'll just take out the 5th for right now, and that'll give you a C9 chord. Or you can add the 5th back in right here and that'll give you another voicing of the C9, but this is a pretty difficult voicing to play, so if you're not used to playing more difficult voicings, this would be pretty tough. And it can be a little muddy just because of the way it's voiced, so it might not even be the best option if you're playing with other musicians. So one thing you could do is just take this root out, because like I said, the first note you can take out is a 5th, but you can also take out the root, because when you're playing with other musicians, a lot of times the bassist or piano will cover that root for you and you don't need to. But even if you're playing by yourself, you don't necessarily have to have that root. It can just be implied. So if you do that, then you'd have a voicing of a C9, and this is a really common way to play a dominant ninth chord, and you can get a lot of use out of this voicing. Or if we go back to the C7 shell voicing, instead of playing the dominant ninths like we just did, we can add the ninth right here with the shell voicing, and that's another way you can play a C9. Next chord, if we go back to a drop 3 C7 chord, if we want to get to a dominant 11 chord, we can drop the 5th back a whole step to the 11. That's because the 11 is the same as the 4, and that would give us a C11 chord, or a C dominant 11 chord. And technically this is a C7 add 11 because we don't have a ninth in it, but like I've been saying, you don't have to get that technical most of the time when you're talking about chords. So a lot of times this is just a way you could play a C11 chord if you saw that listed on a chart. But if you did want a full voicing and add the 9 in there, you could move your 3 to here and then move this 3 back a whole step to the 9th, and that would give you a full voicing of the C11 chord. And again, this is a pretty difficult voicing to finger and can be kind of muddy if you're playing with other musicians. So again, another option is just to take this root out, and that would be a C11 chord just without the root. And of course these voicings don't have the 5th as well, but like I've been saying, you can omit the 5th anytime. Pretty much anytime you can omit the 5th from a chord without changing the sound of the chord much. It's the least important interval to have in most chords. Next chord we're going to get to is a C13, and we can do that by going back to the C7 shell voicing and just adding the 13 or 6 right here, and that gives you a C13. And technically this one is a C7 add 6 or a C7 add 13 because there's no ninth in it. But like I said, you don't have to be that technical, so this can still be a C13. Or if you want to add the ninth, the easiest place to add it would be right here, and that would give you a C13 chord with all the voicings except the 5th. Or another voicing you can get, which is a harder one to play, is to go back to this C9 and then take this 5th and move it up a whole step to the 13, because the 13 is the same as the 6, and that would give you a C13 chord. So those are some useful ways you can play 5 chords. Like I said, check out our chord e-guides if you would like to get more options and really dive into it. But hopefully this will give you ideas of how it lays out on the fretboard and the way the intervals can lay out or interchange with each other, as far as like a 6 and a 13, a 4 and 11, 2 and 9. So hopefully by this point you're getting a lot of the theory you need to be able to understand how chords actually lay out on the fretboard. And you can go ahead and move on to the next lesson, where I'm going to show you how to build chords starting on the 6th note of the major scale. So I'll show you how to build 6 chords. And be sure to download the eGuide. All the diagrams are in there. And be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.